Islam. Islam 101.
Bismillah. Welcome to another episode of Islam 101. I'm your host, Abu Usamah Althahabi, and we have with us here today some of our respected students. On my right, we have Nick, and next to him, Sardar. And then we have two new guests. We have Ahmed as well as Muhammad. Today, insha'Allah ta'ala, we're going to deal with another important topic that's connected to the fiqh of al-Islam. In the previous episodes, we spoke about the sources of legislation. Today we want to deal with, insha'Allah, 6 critical points as it relates to making things permissible or impermissible in the religion. In al-Islam, unlike any other religion, it is not permissible for anyone to come and to have the nerve or the audacity to say, this particular food is permissible to eat, and that particular food is not permissible. This particular type of clothing is permissible to wear, or that particular type of clothing is not permissible to wear. This is not for anyone to do. Not even the Prophet or the Messenger of al-Islam, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, may the peace and blessings of Allah forever be upon him. When we find the religions that preceded al-Islam, namely Christianity and Judaism, we find that there are people still today who are making permissible what Allah did not make permissible, and they're making impermissible what Allah has made permissible. Like the example is pork, khinzir. We find that for those of you who have some knowledge and some background of the Bible, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that Jesus was a Hebrew as well as Moses. Both of them were from Beni Israel. They were Israelites. And with that being the case, in the Bible, the New Testament as well as the Old Testament, it is a clear prohibition of eating any type of pork. And yet we'll find in the church, pork may be sold. This has been mentioned in one of the authentic hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when one of his companions came to him who was a Christian at one time. His name was Adi ibn Hatim. May Allah be pleased with him. Rasulullah said about what took place with Adi and the people who he followed as it relates to the monks and the priests from the children of Israel, from the Jews and the Christians. Rasulullah read an ayat or a verse from the Quran in which Allah said, and they took their priests and their monks as laws along with Allah. The people who followed them, they took their monks and their priests as laws, gods, along with Allah. When that particular companion heard that, he said, O Messenger of Allah, we never worship the monks and the priests. We never worship the preacher or those people who are the leaders of the church or the synagogue. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, didn't Allah make certain things permissible and they came and made them impermissible? He said yes. And then he mentioned again, and didn't Allah make certain things impermissible and those people came and they made them permissible? He said yes. Rasulullah told him that was the worship that you people used to do. So in al-Islam, we do not find it permissible by any stretch of the imagination for another human being to come to say something is permissible or something is impermissible, except if it is revealed in the Quran or Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, brought it in his authentic sunnah. We've been mentioning as well concerning the issue of the fitrah, and different aspects of the fitrah. And we said that the fitrah is the natural disposition that the human being is born upon. The natural disposition to know that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah. The natural disposition that Allah has created inside of an individual to know the difference between right and wrong. To be able to appreciate that concept, do unto others as you would like others to do unto you. There are many aspects of the fitrah. We mentioned quite a few of them. Well, the fitrah of many of the people was contaminated and polluted by the different devils, the Prophet called them, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The different shayateen who came to the people, they came into their environment, they came into their households, they came and they started to make people think and understand issues in the improper way. One of the things that was changed by the shayateen, the devils, was this issue of halal and haram. The Prophet of Al-Islam, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, may Allah be pleased with him, and may his peace and blessings ever be upon him, he said, verily Allah said in this hadith that is a hadith al-Qudsi, Allah said, verily I created all of my servants, I created them all upright, hunafa. Every individual is hanif. That's the one who says, La ilaha illallah. There's none worthy of worship except Allah. And then the devils came, and the devils changed them from their religion. And the devils made impermissible for them what I made permissible. And they also made permissible what I made impermissible. So in the religion of Al-Islam, the one who delves into this particular realm of making something halal that is haram or vice versa, he is considered by the religion of Al-Islam and in the religion of Al-Islam as being a Satan, a devil, and it's from the major crimes. Which brings us to the second point as it relates to the halal and the haram. The second point is that anyone who takes it upon himself to say something is halal that is not halal or haram that is not haram, someone who legislates in the religion on his own, he makes permissible things that Allah has made impermissible, or he makes impermissible those things that Allah has made permissible. The one who does that, he is fallen into polytheism. He has fallen into shirk and disbelief. This is one of the clearest and biggest forms of disbelief in the religion of Al-Islam. If a person comes and he says, well, it's not permissible for you to get married, or I myself, it's not permissible for me to get married. Allah has made it halal. He made it permissible. Not only is it permissible, but it is highly recommended that every man and woman, everyone who has the ability should get married at one particular time or another. That person says it's not permissible for him to get married or someone else to get married. This is a form of disbelief in the religion. Allah mentioned one of the many ayat, many of the verses of the Quran that mention, or do they have partners along with Allah that have legislated for them what Allah did not give any authority for them to do? So Allah called those people who do that shuraka, partners along with Allah. They make halal what is not halal, or they make haram impermissible what is not impermissible. So that is a form of disbelief in the religion. When we dealt with the issue of a takfir, those Muslims who are easy and they are quick to pronounce disbelief on another Muslim because that Muslim may be doing a particular thing that has been described in the religion as being disbelief. We explained that there are two types of disbelief. There's that thing of disbelief that is a major one. If you fall into it, you go outside of the realm of Al-Islam, outside of the fold of Al-Islam. You are no longer a member in the ummah or the nation of Muslims. That's the major disbelief. And then you have the minor disbelief, the thing that if a person falls into it, he doesn't become a disbeliever. He's fallen into a major sin, and it is a crime that has to be avoided and it has to be left and discarded. But nonetheless, he does not become a disbeliever. Concerning the major kufr, the major disbelief, we explained, and we want to reiterate this point because this is a problem that we're dealing with today in the Muslim world, and the Muslims are dealing with this amongst themselves. If a person makes what is known as al-istihlal is when he says something that is clearly impermissible, he says, no, it is permissible. He says to drink intoxicants is permissible. And he believes it's impermissible, knowing full well that it's not permissible. He says that homosexuality is permissible. He knows it's not permissible, but for some reason, political or other than that, he says it's permissible. Then he's making istihlal, and it is part of this particular issue that we're dealing with. The second point of the halal and the haram, that if someone makes something that is impermissible, he makes it permissible, or vice versa, then what he has done in essence is he has succeeded in making himself, or the person who does it, a partner along with Allah the Most High. We're going to stop right here concerning these 2 points before we move on to the next 4 points, so that we can open up the door of discussion with our panel, with the students here, and we'll see what they have to say. So we'll start from the right if either one of you has a question or an issue. Anyone?
Yeah, I have a question.
Nick.
I want to ask you, are there any kinds of book, I mean the ones that resemble civil or criminal law books, that in an elaborated way tells what things are halal and what are haram, what is permitted and what is not permitted?
Concerning the books of Al-Islam, the scholars of Al-Islam said about the Islamic library that the Islamic library is like an ocean that does not have any shores. You will not be able to exhaust the Islamic library, because in every single science of Al-Islam, there are multiple books that are dealing with each and every science. So as a student of knowledge, as a Muslim, those of you who are preoccupying yourselves with purchasing books, you know, whether it's in English or in Arabic, but especially in Arabic, the original language of this religion, you will find that you will never be able to collect all of the books in any given science. So with that being the case, there are many books that have elaborated and clearly defined what is the halal and what is the haram in Al-Islam. Civil law books and other than that. The books of Al-Islam, the scholars of Al-Islam, have not left any stone unturned as it relates to our religion, coming to know about the halal and the haram. Some of them are contemporary, and some of them have been written a long time ago. The halal and the haram in Al-Islam, where they take specific ideas and explain them, or they take specific issues and they deal with them point by point. So yes, there are different books. Whether those books are in a particular madhab, they are present, or whether those books have been written and they focus upon what is known as fiqh al-maqarin, or comparative fiqh, where they just want to deal with the bottom line, the halal and the haram, without paying any attention to what a madhab says. So yes, there are those types of books. Sardar.
I want to ask just, is there any conditions in which halal became haram or haram become halal?
Are there any conditions in which a thing becomes haram or a thing becomes halal? We're going to deal with that inshallah in the upcoming points. Some of the descriptions of the halal and some of the descriptions of the haram. But just in general, if a thing is harmful or that particular thing is dirty or khabith, is filthy, then it's going to be haram. If it is harmful or is dirty, it's going to be haram. And we're going to come to that and we'll explain it inshallah when we resume today's episode. So stay tuned and we hope to see you in the second half of today's episode concerning the halal and the haram.
Islam 101.
Let's talk.
So this is something that you have to point out to them in the Bible.
Something which is, I think, very rarely needed by the youth, which is staying firm on the truth.
This is just one of the greatest examples for me of how to control your anger.
Within the framework of being the cleanest religion, the cleanest jurisprudence, and in the meantime, the kindest religion to animals.
Watch Let's Talk with Khalil Amanet as he interviews guests and discusses a variety of topics, everything from youth issues to religious issues. Join us here on Huda TV.
Islam 101.
Welcome back to Islam 101. We've been discussing the issue of the halal and the haram in Al-Islam. And we've dealt with 2 points so far. The first point is that the halal and the haram, making something permissible or impermissible, is the exclusive and the sole right of Allah. He is the law giver. And Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like his brothers from the prophets and the messengers, were sent, and they were sent to be obeyed. But from their own selves, they cannot make something halal nor can they make something haram. We even have Rasulullah on a number of occasions saying to his companions, I do not make halal haram or haram halal. He said that on a number of occasions concerning different issues. He would like to make a personal point about something that he didn't want to allow to take place concerning his own family. So before letting the people know that he wasn't going to allow this particular thing, he wasn't going to allow his daughter to be in a particular situation because it's his daughter and he's responsible for her. Before he gave his personal opinion, he would say, I do not make what Allah made halal haram, nor do I make what Allah made haram halal. But this particular thing, I do not allow it for my family. So he made it perfectly clear, crystal clear, that halal and haram is not even for him to tread into that particular arena. The second point that we dealt with is the point that anyone who takes it upon himself to make something haram and to make something halal, he has put on his shoulder great responsibility. He has made himself a partner along with Allah. This is from the exclusive rights of Allah. And that's why our scholars in Islam, past and present, like Imam al-Shafi and other than him, they used to tell the people, beware of being that individual who, he says to the people, this is halal or this is haram. Because this is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is only the exclusive right of Allah. So now with that introduction, inshallah, we'll continue the second half of this segment by going to the students on my left, and we'll start with Brother Ahmed. Brother Ahmed, what's your question?
My question is, what about the new inventions and innovations that are found in our present day? How do you know if it's halal or haram?
Concerning the new inventions that have been introduced to the world today, because Prophet Muhammad lived over 1,423 years ago. So there are a lot of things that are going on now that they didn't even have the ability to conceive back then. We do not claim that Prophet Muhammad knows everything, past and present. He didn't even know everything concerning his particular time. He knew those things that were peculiar to his environment, and he knew those things that Allah revealed to him and that Allah allowed him to know from the unseen. So how do we know that certain things are permissible or impermissible during our time now? We know that because the nature of al-Islam, and I use that term very loosely, the way that al-Islam is that it's a religion of flexibility, first of all. Second of all, the way that the legislation is in the religion of al-Islam is that it has addressed every issue, whether it was in the past or whether it is in the future. And that's why in these points that we're making today, you're going to see how something that wasn't present during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is halal or haram based upon some of the issues, these points that we're going to make. And then we have what we discussed already, al-qiyas. Al-qiyas, we've already taken that one of the sources of legislation in Islam is the legislation and the ability to say something is halal or haram based upon qiyas. Something that is present that has a ruling. We know the ruling of that particular thing. And then something new is introduced. And it has the similar properties or qualities of that thing that has a ruling. So as such, the new thing takes the same ruling as that particular thing that was in the past. Those are some of the ways. As we continue to explain these points, you'll see how you don't necessarily have to know every single proof of the Quran or every single proof from the Sunnah to know that something is permissible or impermissible. And we'll do that, inshallah, in the upcoming episodes. Akhi, you have a question?
Hey, I have a
Brother
question.
Yasir?
Yeah, I have a question, a small question, but I think it is very important. How can Muslims nowadays be always away from the devil's steps to have always a strong iman?
How can the Muslim today stay away from and avoid falling into making things that are halal, haram, and vice versa? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
This is going to require a level of awareness on the Muslim's part, a level of wara. It's going to require a level of taqwa, him being conscious of Allah, the Most High. The Prophet ﷺ told us in an authentic hadith, on the authority of that illustrious companion, An-Nu'man ibn Bashir, may Allah be pleased with both of them. He said, verily the halal is clear, and verily the haram is clear, And between the halal and the haram is the gray area that not many people know about. So whoever avoids the gray area, he has protected his religion and his honor. And whoever has fallen into the gray area, he has fallen into what is haram. He has fallen into what is haram. So as it relates to the halal and the haram, our religion, the way the legislation is that the halal is very clear. No one is going to debate whether or not drinking water is halal, whether or not wearing a watch is permissible, whether or not wearing a black t-shirt is permissible. No one's going to debate those types of issues because they're clear. And in contrast, those things that are impermissible are also clear. It is that gray area that people need to avoid. He said, not many people know about those issues. There are some people who know about it, which is the answer to the question. We refer the issue back to those people who know about it, and they are the competent and qualified scholars. We're not talking about the people who I identify as a scholar or he identifies as a scholar. We're talking about the real scholars of Al-Islam, who we get our instructions from, who we get our understanding of the religion from, bona fide scholars. So we look to the scholars and we follow what Allah has commanded us to do. Ask the people of knowledge if you don't know. So that's how the Muslim avoids falling into this area. Before he puts his foot down, he wants to be absolutely sure it's permissible for him to put his foot down. Do you guys have any more questions?
I had another
Go ahead,
question.
Ahmed.
What about the acceptance of halal and haram? For example, you find a person working in a bank that involve some sort of usury, some financial dealings that involve usury, and you tell him, usury is haram, and you try to explain to him, and he just doesn't accept it. He doesn't want to take the ruling on that certain issue.
Part of being a Muslim is that we have to love those things that Allah loves, and we have to hate those things that Allah, the Most High, He hates. Not only is that a part of the religion, but it is an example of a person being a mu'min, as we mentioned before, al-mu'min, the real possessor of faith. We have the Muslim, and then we have the higher level, al-mu'min, the one who has iman, true faith. And one of the things that he has faith in is the last day, that he's going to be held accountable for what he did in this life. So, in the authentic hadith, it's clear. Whoever loves for Allah and he hates for Allah, he gives for Allah and he prevents from giving, he holds back for Allah. Whoever, this is his description, then his faith is complete. So the believer, the Muslim, is not considered to be a believer until he loves those things that Allah loves and he hates those things that Allah hates. So on one hand, we have that individual who, when you tell him, you must do this and you must do that, but due to some misunderstanding, due to some weakness, due to him following his desires, he doesn't leave it alone. This person still is a Muslim, and we hope for that individual the good in this life and the next life. And his situation is bad, but even though it's bad, it's not like the other individual. The other individual who he hates the halal and he loves the haram. There's that person who you say you shouldn't work in the bank because of a usury, but he says, make dua to me, ask Allah to make it easy for me. He'll continue, but he knows it's wrong. I was approached recently, I was staying in a hotel, and the hotel that I was staying in, I was being served by some Muslims, and they came out and they said, Akhi, brother, please make supplication that Allah takes us out of this workplace that we're in right now, because they sell alcohol here and people come and they carry on in a way that Allah doesn't love. That individual is in something that's not permissible, but he knows it's not permissible. But he stays there because he needs the money to take care of his family. I don't say that that's right, but the point is, you see, he recognizes and he acknowledges that what he's doing is not acceptable. So the one who continues to work in the bank, or he does what is wrong, but he knows that it's not acceptable, he's not like the individual who loves the haram and he hates the halal. This is a person who is on the way of destruction. We want to give you an example of that. The example that we will give is the example of plural marriage. There's not a woman who Allah has created, and Allah knows best, except that she wants to have the exclusive right to the heart of her husband and the love of her husband. The companions of Rasulullah were like that as well. Our mothers, the wives of Rasulullah, were like that. There were some jealousies that transpired between them. So there may be that individual, that particular woman, for an example, who she hates the concept of plural marriage. She hates what Allah has made halal, and she in her hatred for that particular thing, she goes overboard and she ascribes to that particular thing, that plural marriage for an example, characteristics and descriptions that can take her possibly outside of the fold of al-Islam, for an example. This is what is not permissible. But if a person from their own accord, they're saying, well, that particular issue is not for me. I don't hate it, but I don't want to practice it. That's your right. That's your right. There are things that are halal. Someone doesn't like to drink milk. No one can censor him or blame him. Another person doesn't like to eat steak. No one can blame him or censor him. But to hate what Allah has made halal or to love what Allah has made haram, this is the thing that is not permissible, especially as it relates to issues connected to the ibadat or the forms of worship in al-Islam. Do you guys have any more questions?
I have one more one. I'm
sure,
kind of shy from you. I ask you a lot of
don't
questions.
Don't be shy. So
All
what the program is for?
I have a comment and I have a question. That Islam comes from word taslim, which is acceptance. So this is something that people should stress on and be careful, that Islam is taslim. You should accept that the word Islam comes from acceptance.
Exactly. It's a good point.
The question is, during hard times, you have a real necessity to do something haram or to eat something haram. So is it allowed for you during times of necessity to do something haram or to eat something haram? And what is the necessity in Islam?
Yes, concerning this issue of a necessity, this is what is known in Arabic as a durura, when a person is in dire straits and he's being forced or compelled to fall into that thing which is normally not permissible. Like he finds himself stranded in the desert and he comes across a pig or some swine and that's all he has. Al-Islam allows him to eat that particular thing. This is permissible. Whatever is not permissible, if you have to do it as a result of necessity, it is permissible. In explaining this issue very briefly, because it really needs a topic all to itself, and I think that's what we'll do, inshallah. I think in the next episode what we'll deal with the issue of ad-durura in the religion. How do we understand it and who determines it? So we're going to stop here with this particular episode, and we look forward to seeing you inshallah at Islam 101 when we come back to deal with the issue of the fiqh and the halal and the haram in al-Islam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Islam. Islam. Islam.